Animating a camera that is moving through 3D space can be kind of tricky. And there are just about as many different methodologies to do that as there are guys willing to explain their methodologies to you. And many of those methods involve the use of null object layers, sometimes many null object layers. Well, I don't subscribe to that theory. I subscribe to the keeping it simple methodology. I don't use null object layers, but what I do use is a little trick that I haven't seen other people use, and that is separate dimensions. And I'll explain separate dimensions in a moment. So what I want to do here is I want to explain two different methods to animate the camera. One involves using the selection tool, which you're kind of accustomed to using when you move things around. And the other one involves using the unified camera tool. So I'll focus on the selection tool in this lesson and the unified camera tool in the next lesson. And I will show you a couple of null object layer techniques in another lesson. So to follow along with this selection tool methodology, go to Working Files, After Effects Projects, and open up 18.02 Animation Selection. So our goal here is to move a camera through this scene. And the first order of business is to make a new camera. You can go to Layer, New Camera this way, or right-click someplace down here that's not on top of the text or one of these labels, like over here, for example. Right-click there and go New Camera. And we're going to take more or less the defaults here, the 2-node camera, the 50mm version, and we'll turn off Enable Depth of Field so we keep everything in focus here and click OK. And there's our camera. So I want to animate this camera. We're going to use the selection tool to do that, but the first order of business is to create what are called separate dimensions for position. So I'm going to press P for the camera here for position, and I want to create separate dimensions. Now, why do that? You've got three values here for X, Y, and Z. And you've seen this before, like with scale, for example, but it complicates matters when you're trying to move some object around in space, because sometimes you might want to move it forward, or you might want to move it just left or up and down. And then having one keyframe describe three different things where you want to change only one thing can create some problems. So it's just so simple. Convert this to three different things. Right-click on this and go separate or separate, depending on how you want to call this, a verb or an adjective, dimensions. And now we've got three separate dimensions, one for X, one for Y, and one for Z. And this will make matters a little bit easier. Also, I want to add the point of interest here. The point of interest, to see that is Shift A, just like adding an anchor point. When you work with the camera, A is the point of interest. And now we're ready to go. So I want to turn on keyframes for only X and Z. We're going to work in the XZ space. That's this flat plane here. X left and right, Z off in the distance are coming toward us. So keyframe X and Z. Now to do this work, I need to work in two views. So I go up to here and click on two views horizontal. And the one on the left here, I want that to be from the top. Let's see where we are here. Pull this down a little ways. There we go. Click on the camera so I can see it. So you see that the camera lines up there and shows the width of the camera. And there's the first boy right there. And there's the text right there. That red line is the text. And that little blue line is the first boy right there. So now we're going to animate the X and the Z values. Let's go in a little bit, maybe about a second or so. I'm going to hover down here until I see the Z show up. Now I want to pull the camera forward, straight forward. I can't pull it sideways or left or right because the Z only goes forward or back. I'll go past that first boy and kind of look right at this one here. And he's not quite lined up, not quite centered up. We're going to take the X now and pull it to the right. And there we go. Now, the animation here will not be forward right. The animation will look at the beginning points and the ending points. So it goes diagonally like that. So you see how this works? Here we go, like from here, and goes diagonally over to there. Now, we may not want it to be diagonally like that in terms of the point of view, so we'll change the point of interest a little bit later. But notice that the point of interest now is following us as we go along. Let's move forward a little bit more. We'll go on to the next boy. Let's go past this first one, getting Z, and go out past him now. We'll go toward the second boy. Let's see where he is here by just dragging this down with a hand tool. A little bit farther, I think. There we go, and pull it to the right. And we'll go a little bit farther here. We'll go past that boy now. So I'll just take the Z tool again, go right over his shoulder. There we go. And we'll just pull this down with a hand tool and move a little bit farther. And at that some point here, we're going to have this guy flip around and look back. We're going to use the point of interest for that. So let's see how this animation looks here. We go back to the beginning. Now we're kind of pointed off to the right a little bit now instead of at that boy because the point of interest is stuck now way up there where we left it moments ago. So we'll deal with that in a second here. So let's go back down here and you'll see as we follow along here, it goes past that boy, goes to the next one, kind of makes a right here, heads off to that boy and goes over his shoulder and it goes to the end. Very good. Well, now we want to add some keyframes to the point of interest. So I click on the point of interest. I need to click away so I don't select all four there. Now I click on the point of interest, and now it's keyframed at the beginning here. We need to change it a little bit. And sometimes it's hard to find the point of interest. And that's one reason to use a null object layer. You can put the point of interest on a null object layer, and then the point of interest will have the color of the null object layer. But at any rate, we got the regular color here, this kind of lavender color. Let me pull this thing down a little bit. And there's the point of interest way out there, but we just need to kind of point it off to the left a little bit here. So I'm going to drag it left here for our first point of interest keyframe. That works. There you go. Now we're lined up. Let's go to the next keyframe over here by pressing one of these navigator things. That kid's lined up pretty well, but I want to make sure I keep that keyframe so that we don't gradually go from here to something out there. So I'm going to add a keyframe for the point of interest there, so it's equal to the first one. So it goes like this to there. On to the next one now. I want to change the point of interest for him, but notice how it's off to the left here. Let me drag it to the right a bit here. Makes more sense to line him up like that. Let's go to the next one now. It should be kind of right past him, perhaps. Let's see what that one is right there. Now we're past him. Let me start pulling it a little bit left now, because we're going to swing this thing around. That's going to go from here, and it's going to go over his shoulder there a little bit. So maybe I should put this point of interest a little bit farther back here. I'll pull it down to the right a little bit more here like that, so it doesn't get over his shoulder quite yet. So you notice we don't have to line things up with all the other keyframes here. Now it's kind of swung around a little bit. Now I want to swing around some more here. So I turn this around. Now if I had just taken two keyframes and pulled it straight back like this, it would not have swung nicely like this. So adding these keyframes allows it to swing around in an arc. Here we go. We're going to look right back at everybody now. Like that. Let me see all of them now. I think this one keyframe here probably should go back. We should probably move this camera back a little bit. So I'm going to take the Z tool and move it back like that. So now let's take a look at this animation. Go back to the beginning. Starts here, goes past that kid, zooms on over there, goes over this kid's shoulder, and starts swinging around and looking back at everybody. Very good. Now we can deal with the Y, the crane, if you want to think of it. We've now created the dolly motion. We've got a camera on a track here, moving it through the scene on a track using the X and the Z values. And now we're going to put it on a crane. We're going to lift it up above the scene with a crane, and Y acts as our crane. So I'll click away here like that so I don't select the rest of the keyframes. Click on the Y keyframe for that starting position. Let's go in a little bit, like right about that far. And I'll click another keyframe to hold that one at the same spot. Let's get right above this kid's head there, right about there, I think. Let's lift it up now. Let's take the Y value up. I'll drag it up like this by making it smaller. That's what the Y value does. And the point of interest still kind of holds us out there. Now let's go forward a little bit farther and bring our crane back down again. Let's drag it to the right and bring it down. So this allows us to deal with the crane this way. Let's go toward the end here where we're going to crane things up again as we start spinning around. So I want to get it up high right there. I want it to be pretty high. So I want to start that process, let's say right here. So I'll put a keyframe that equals that one by clicking on the diamond there. We'll go all the way to the end here. And let's lift this guy way the heck up and see how that looks. We might have to adjust the point of interest when we do this, but we'll drag it up here and see how it looks. There you go. We do need to adjust the point of interest now to pull it farther away. I want to make sure I'm on this point of interest keyframe. So by navigating to it right there, grab the point of interest. Again, sometimes it's kind of tricky to pick it, but it's right there. Let's pull it out a ways now. There you go. Now we got it. So let's see how this thing looks. We go back to the beginning, go past everybody like that, go up, go down. Let me show you that up and down again. You go up, and then we go down, past this little boy here at the end, and now we're going to spin around and get a wide view off in the distance. So if we want to fine-tune things, let's say looking at it from the side, if you can't really see how the point of interest works here, you want to adjust it from the side, you can always change the view over here from the top to something like right or left. When you click on the camera again, and you get the scene in view here. Let me pull back a little bit so you can see it. There it is there. It looks a little convoluted now to see it all, but you click on point of interest, and you get in a little closer, then you can work on the point of interest if you need to in terms of getting it to the right elevation or something like that. And so there it is. If you wanted to lift it up a little bit, you could always adjust it from the side as well if you need to work on it there. But I think things worked out pretty darn well here. So that is how you control the camera using separate dimensions and using the selection tool.